Well, finally we get a Living Legend event to bring to all of you, and I could not be more ready to see just what Flesh and Blood's past brings for us today in the present. My name is Sam Brand. This is DMArmada. How you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling well.
Yep.
I am ready to watch some Living Legend format games today. We're going to see some really exciting ones, I think, for this first round. We've just been told that there's an Iyslander mirror to start things off.
Come on.
Which, I mean, there's a lot of Iyslander fans, and there a lot of Iyslander fans really enjoyed the mirror. Some of them didn't, but a lot of them that I've talked to in the past really enjoyed the mirror.
So we're going to enjoyed Iyslander. You enjoyed the mirror. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, it's really intricate, really back and forth. And then I think it was Levia Prism.
Yep.
Is the backup match as well.
Yep.
So
we know Levia gets access to the incredible card in Living Legend, Art of War. I actually started that making a joke like I didn't know what she gets in Living Legend. I was like, we know, but I realized, Art of War was banned. No, she'll get Art of War back.
Yeah. So you can definitely play that. And Prism. And I believe the assumption would be that it's the OG Prism, now we get to play with some of these new cards, some of the old cards as well, get to do some crazy stuff. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, legitimately, I have not had the opportunity to truly explore much of the Living Legend format in my own personal life, and so getting a chance to watch some of these games streamed at such a high level, thanks to our friends at both Savage Feats and MinMax Games, I think will be a nice opportunity ahead of not only the Team Cup, coming up in Osaka, which will be a highly, I think anticipated event, as truly some of the best players in the world representing their countries face down in Team Living Legend before the tournament, but also, of course, the calling in Chicago, the very first Living Legend calling that this game has ever seen, a true landmark event that aims to cement this format as one of the kind of two pillars that the community can always rely on.
I mean, it's been gaining ground for the past year, the past calendar year. We've seen so much in this space for the Living Legend format starting to grow as battle hardens are being held at these larger events, and now its own event here as well. And then it's going to culminate at the end of the year, like you mentioned, with the calling in Chicago. So if you are looking to pick up these heroes of yesteryear, dust them off, grab their weapons, and suit up for some brand new games of Flesh and Blood with them, make sure that you look at the calling this December and head on out to Chicago to be able to play in that format. A lot of people really excited for that.
Definitely. I mean, I think, no, I'm sure it wasn't intended, and I think they maybe even stated it in the Ban and Restricted article, but one of the main talking points I have seen in the community is that how the banning those cards out of Classic Constructed, but leaving them mostly legal in Living Legend, has really led to two distinct formats that you really feel like I get to play with all these powerful cards that are just not accessible in Classic Constructed. So now the formats do begin to kind of each take on their own identity, not just the heroes that have reached Living Legend, also the cards that are no longer available in the Classic Constructed format.
It does create its own unique feeling to be able to play with those powerful cards. And when all of these heroes are more powerful, everyone gets to experience that really, spiky, this is me at my strongest experience. That's what's the most fun. Now, what I heard is that it's time to jump down into the arena.
I heard the
same.
That
we can see some Iyslander versus Iyslander action.
Ah, man, I do feel, actually, just looking at these heroes, I'm like, wow, I missed you. How are things up in the halls of Asgard? Where do they go when they reach Living Legend?
That's a great question. We got to figure
the halls of story.
we got to figure out a name for that.
Into the very fabric.
How cool would it be if they created some sort of a lore space for that to actually take place? Nevertheless, Iyslander, it's funny, while Iyslander and ice in general as a talent was around, players were, under the effects of all of these powerful ice cards and looking at the disruption that it created and feeling one way about it. And now that the ice has lifted and summer has fallen, now we have players just wanting it back, wanting to enter the icy abyss yet again, and this is your place for it. If you want to play Iyslander, powered up now as well, because you have access to some of these Amulet of Ice. You can play Amulet of Ice again, which is a really, really powerful card in the Living Legend format. Now you can do that, and we're going to see these players engage in this mirror on a new axis.
Shout out Sage's Muir Woods jacket there. Northern California.
Oh, yeah?
Full national park. Also, shout out to Sage, top 8 of the battle-hardened Milwaukee on new.
That's correct.
Ran through that tournament on new, fell out in the quarterfinals against the eventual victor, Nick Gabler, which, of course, I always feel like if I'm going to lose a tournament, I hope to lose to the eventual winner because it shows that, at least it was against the person who did the best all day.
100% agree. Pile shuffling to get things sorted up. And then, of course, shuffles after that. Had the whole conversation yesterday on what is pile shuffling even.
A form of shuffling.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in the name.
Okay.
And that's that. And that's all I'll say on the matter.
There you go. We can run a poll in chat for those that believe in pile shuffling.
There's no need.
The poll is currently being occupied, we're being told, by who is going to win, which I think is a far better use of the polling system provided by YouTube.
Tough. Round one, we know nothing about these players or their decks. Feels like it's kind of just like a popularity contest at that point. Like, what are people voting on? Like, I choose right. I choose right side of the screen.
It's left Twix, right Twix. It's a classic conundrum. An enigma, if you will. Nevertheless, these players are going to shuffle up, present their decks. Yeah, I mean, revisiting the world that we live in of yesteryear with Ice and Disruption, this was a very back-and-forth, intricate matchup. Yes, thank you for zooming in on those sleeves. Yes, they have become a Midwestern meme at this
I have
point.
one of those. I have one of those sleeves. Yeah, I think I got it calling Indy a couple years ago. Actually.
Yes, it became a bit of a thing for a good while. Some people love it, some people hate it. But you know what? I love it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make you wait a little longer to hear that. Presenting the equipment, and spoiler alert, it's exactly the same. Exactly what you would think. You get a bit more psychic damage for having your Waning Moon signed on the side of Sage.
I have my Waning Moon signed.
Well, there you go. But as you would expect, we're looking at Coronet Peak. We're looking at Metacarpus Node so that you have that extra reach at the end game if you're trying to, assemble the major combo, or if this game goes a different way. Obviously, if we're playing both Bullander style lists and we manage to get to these lower life totals in some crazy way, you can just Emeritus Scolding with that Metacarpus Node, with that Storm Striders as well. But starting off on turn 0 with the Channel Lake Frigid, a card that players, I think, for a time were wishing was still in the CC meta, but here it is in Living Legend.
Move to the end step.
Moving to the end step is Brian. Any effects from Sage? No amulets? No anything in the instant speed realm? Let's talk a little bit about what we can expect moving into this game. The Iyslander Mirror is a game about the Alluvian Constellas. It's a game about getting your Waning Moon in as much as possible, often utilizing the Alluvian Constellas. And if you can't just tempo out your opponent, often it is that great Ice Eternal combo. So many Frostbites off the back of these fuse cards like Insidious Chill that we see Sage develop here.
I think that is a key in this matchup as well. Insidious Chill is one of those cards that just became the most, like the pivot point of the matchup. And especially now that we're in Living Legend format, same thing with Amulet of Ice, because being able to lock your opponent out by using the Insidious Chill triggers at the right time, not as early as you would think, but at the correct time, means that you can set up some massive damage combos in the mid to late game. And these players managing their Insidious Chills, managing their fuse effects, and this one is the best one in the deck, arguably, probably not even arguably, in Aether Ice Vein, is a huge point. And oh, look at this. Insidious Chill pitched, Insidious Chill in the hand. You don't necessarily love to see them stacked up like that, but we might see that make its way to the arsenal on this turn.
And I think you can see Brian had access to go again, but the Channel Lake Frigid, a card that not only is going to be able to stick around if 2 ice cards are pitched, thanks to pitching into the Waning Moon here because it is an instant speed ability. So 2 Insidious Chills on the bottom of the deck, not exactly where you want to be in your second cycle, but keeping that Channel Lake Frigid important given that Iyslander is an ironic deck in that it hates dealing with Frostbite. So many of its abilities, especially when it's doing even Scar for a Scar into a Wounded Bull, right? Or, even if it's just one Aether Ice Vein, they are perfectly on rate. They're perfectly on curve, I suppose. So any Frostbites, any CLF type effects, Iyslander hates them. Yep. So Channel Lake Frigid here, if you look even on this Aether Veil, is going to make it so that with one floating, there cannot even be a Waning Moon activation.
I'm very glad he chose to pitch the second Insidious Chill instead of arsenaling it. I mean, there's a temptation if you're looking at a blue ice card, you can play it. It gives you frostbite, but Insidious Chill too early in this matchup really does sometimes feel detrimental to the overall game plan of the deck. And instead, he chose to arsenal the Enlightened Strike and just play that out. In this matchup, it definitely feels a little bit more intricate on where you choose to arsenal it when you choose to put a blue card in. Being able to put double Insidious Chill on the bottom of the deck alongside of, I believe it was, what did he just, the blue he just pitched.
Ice Eternal.
Yes, Ice Eternal. Putting those on the bottom, if you are playing for this long game of just the, trying to set up a pitch stack and play out these, disruptive pieces at the end of the game is quite good.
Now 7 damage here. Sage probably happy to get to utilize one of these cards for blocking if he cannot use them all with multiple action points. Looks like it's going to be a little frosting. Just a blue 3-block ice card, often utilized for things like the Channel Lake Vigidor, just like this, getting the 3-block value while also being an ice card. Every now and then you get it out of your arsenal at instant speed, turn on the Waning Moon. It can be 4 damage on the opponent's turn. But let's see how Sage utilizes their action point here. It's going to be a red Aether Ice Vein, but this one comes off the back of an Insidious Chill as well. So 2 things are happening. First, the Insidious Chill is going to trigger, asking Brian to either pitch 2 or discard a card. And then the Aether Ice Vein comes across for 5 arcane damage. And of course, with AB4, Brian can stop a lot of it. But after already having to lose a card to the Insidious Chill, the Aether Ice Vein, if it hits, will ask the same uncomfortable question. So Sage is demanding 2 cards here no matter what. In response, however, we have our first Iyslander use of the game. This is a blue Aether Ice Vein coming out of the arsenal, and thus, as a result, because it is blue, Iyslander allows for instant speed play here. 3 damage coming across, and now let's see if Brian wants to utilize anything for the Waning Moon.
So you're taking all 5?
Yeah, so we had the activation there at instant speed response. He's going to have to respond to the chill trigger here, or activate on the chill trigger, resolving it, and going to choose to tuck that Sink Below into the graveyard. The very snap response of the pitch of the Aether Hail, AB1, so you get the Illuvian Constellus counter. Very good. You mentioned it earlier. Managing your counters in this game is a huge paramount importance, and this still leaves Sage with an arsenal to continue to play, and it puts a little bit of pressure on Brian. Now, this is a very long, back-and-forth, intricate matchup, so you are going to expect some big plays, but this is not by any means like the biggest thing in the world. There's the activation. Illuvian Constellus comes off those counters, and Waning Moon fires across for 2.
Now, it looks as though Brian elected to take all 5 and lose the frosting. An option you can do on these Aether Ice Veins, you pitch 1, AB1, you have then 2 floating afterwards. You pitch you just, utilize those 2 for the Aether Ice Vein trigger. So you still block 1 damage while also losing the card. I suppose Brian there wanted to get that frosting out of the deck, didn't want it next to that Ice Eternal that's right there on the bottom after the 2 Insidious Chills, because again, the Ice Eternal with energy potions, with Insidious Chill, threatens to take a lot of cards out of the hand, deal a lot of arcane damage, and then after on the opponent's turn, once the Ice Eternal has stripped all the cards thanks to those Insidious Chills and created a bunch of Frost Bites that even some Frost Hexes can utilize to deal damage, then the Storm Striders finish the game from there. So I guess Brian didn't want that frosting, didn't want to save 1 life, rather just put it into the graveyard.
Yeah, and that's the exact play in response when he played out his own Aether Ice Vein that Sage made to AB1 and then pay the extra 2, which is why she had no floating. And Blizzard here is the fuse with the Aether Ice Vein. Aether Ice Vein number 2 for Sage. Considering on the choices here, the Aether Ice Vein is such an impactful card. In fact, at a time in the Classic Constructed meta, it was even run in yellow, and players were just running 9 copies. Such a powerful, disruptive tool to be able to throw out there, and both players finding them at key points throughout the matchup can really swing one in your favor.
For Sage, however, throwing out the second means there's only one. It is your best arcane spell with your action point because of the disruption that it also allows in conjunction, especially with a card like the Insidious Chill.
2 for Insidious Chill.
AB2, keep the 1 float here. Now,
For 5, right? Yeah.
for the Insidious Chill, excuse me. Now the Aether Ice Vein comes across for 5 points of Arcane, so pitched into the 2 that you needed for the Insidious Chill. Now the Aether Ice Vein comes across.
AB 2, take 3.
Maybe 2, take 3, leave the 2 floating. 2 counters on the Constellus for Brian.
And this is what I was discussing earlier about Insidious Chill. When you find one really early, it almost feels like it doesn't have as much of an impact, especially in this matchup. Now, you are taking blues out of the hand, and if we do bounce over to Brian's hand, I believe, and he still has a blue in hand, and he's got a red attack, probably a Wounded Bull. But sometimes you can, use Insidious Chill to make their turn that much more difficult. But taxing their turn just on innocuous hands doesn't have the same impact as doing it setting up the combo that you're going to then play out on their turn. And so finding an early Insidious Chill doesn't really take you towards that game plan unless you really play into it.
Findall's Fighting Spirit going to be the play for Brian Hoffman.
22.
Getting 1 life, and Sage is going to take all 7 of that. Wonder if they have anything like a Scar for a Scar, something that can have go again. No, it's just going to be a Frost Hex on the end phase, give a Frostbite, and of course, deal a damage thanks to what the Frostbite represents. Frost Hex represents all Frostbites when they pop on the end phase. If they are still there, 1 damage that the Frostbite will present. So multiple Frost Hexes, Ice Eternals. These are the cards utilized in conjunction to finish a game in these mirrors some of the time.
Yeah, we talked yesterday about the Wizard Mirror, and sometimes you can kind of gauge where the Wizard Mirror sits based on the number of potions on the board for each player. This is the same sort of thing with the number of permanents like Frost Hex and Insidious Chill that you see in the Iyslander Mirror. So finding Frost Hexes sets you up for one of those just mega damage combos that you can play out if you can line up your Insidious Chills, your Frost Hexes, even your Amulet of Ices in this format. And so having your first act, or your first resolution, I should say, of the Frost Hex onto the board feels pretty good to be able to find that and play that out there on a turn where it's just 7 damage. I can take a little bit of damage, and then I can play out the first Frost Hex and feel okay about it. Brian most likely looking for his Frost Hexes if he's playing towards that combo end game.
Now, this is one of the first times we've seen Sage only 1 card in hand, not easily able to Arcane Barrier. This is where Brian looks to almost take back some of the tempo. Findall's Fighting Spirits, of course, gained Sage a life, but 1 AB is going to be preserved by Sage. So taking 2, we'll see if there's any Waning Moon that wants to follow up. No cards in hand, nothing floating. Alluvian Constellas can make this Waning Moon come in for 3 without any pitch. So the Waning Moon will. Now both players have gotten a free use of the Waning Moon. Sage will have taken 3 more damage from here.
The other important thing to note in this matchup is when you can get your opponent off of an arsenal, and if you can maintain tempo, forcing them off the arsenal, they have to almost take even more damage just to get back onto an arsenal to sort of play this back and forth game that you're encouraged to do as Iyslander, who can, because she's a wizard, play at instant speed, but only from the arsenal and only if it's a blue. So if you're trying to play that back and forth game plan and trying to set up these Frost Hexes and these other permanents on the board, you almost have to take even more than you would think. There is the yellow Aether Ice Vein showing up. We talked about it earlier. Players playing this card is just so powerful. The effect on it is so disruptive.
No Insidious Chill for Brian, so this only demands 1 card. Sage, of course, can AV 1, go down to 14, keep 2, 1 card left in hand for Brian. But because Sage only had that red Findall's Fighting Spirit, no card in the arsenal here that can respond to this Aether Wildfire and pressure the other Iyslander back. So this is looking, these games can go one of 2 ways, like we're seeing now, or the kind of, end game Frost Hex, more combo-oriented end state. But this game is really just a back and forth tempo, right? Who's losing cards, who has cards in arsenal, who's able to establish the pressure. And here, Brian has gotten Sage now down, looks like A being 1, taking 3, so should be at 15, up 9 life. Sage has got 3 cards to fire back with, but the difference is Brian has now established an arsenal and is hoping to leverage that value over the next couple turns to be in a position where that Storm Striders can just finish this game out. But 2 Frost Hexes now for Sage, looking to slow things down just a little bit. But again, just the 1 card in hand. Brian has that Polar Blast, which means a single blue pitch replaces the Polar Blast and allows for 3 damage to be threatened with that Waning Moon. Asking Sage once again, do you want to go off an arsenal?
Yeah, it's a fun back and forth matchup because you're really asking the question of, will this game go long? do I need a pitch stack? And sometimes the answer is yes, and the game is going to go long. Both players are playing very defensively. Sometimes the players are just either based on the way the hands draw up or what they're choosing to favor. Sometimes it's very quick, first cycle-esque type of a game, and both players starting to get to that half-life total. Sage under half-life, Brian sitting at 24 with some strong tempo options, but staring down, like you said, 2 Frost Hexes means he does have to start favoring, and this is a fantastic card to play out. Both players really trying to find their permanents on the board. It turns out he found all of them at the same time, did Brian.
That must have been from the last turn. That's CLF. So this is an Amulet of Ice. No response from Sage, who I believe is at 15 after that Waning Moon. Now let's see if Sage wants to respond, because now Brian's just got that 1 card in hand. It's going to be a Cold Snap. This represents a lot of damage all of a sudden, thanks to both of those Frost Hexes. This is going to be now a similar style effect that we just saw with the Polar Blast. So this is now 3 Arcane that can be threatened with the Waning Moon, but that Frost Bite, if it is not popped, means 2 more Arcane damage. So all of a sudden, Brian would be down to 19. Sage getting to replace the card in the hand there, thanks to the Cold Snap's effect.
12 from the moon. Yeah. Sorry. You're good. I'm taking 3 here, down to 14. 14?
We've gotten word that the life totals, as far as the devices and the internet itself, is taking a little bit of time to respond. But we'll go ahead and try to, at certain intervals, turn our volume down personally so that you can maybe hear on life update moments, so that we can kind of get an accurate readout of where these players are sitting. But both players sub 20 life at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard from the players. Sounds like Sage is around 12. Brian should be on 19 here.
Choosing if he wants to play out the last Insidious Chill, because the other 2 are at the bottom of the deck. Instead, he's pitching it. The Cold Snap.
Yep. Draw off a Cold Snap. Cool.
Cold Snap here in response to the Energy Potion. However, there is an easy outlet for Sage to pitch into and break that Frostbite, meaning the Frost Hex won't do any damage. It is, of course, the Waning Moon. If you wanted to get the damage in, you would have to wait until the Waning Moon actually is utilized. Then you'd utilize the card from Arsenal, which would create a Frostbite. But Sage had a very clear and easy path there to make this Frostbite go away. A little bit of an issue for Brian, looking to get the most damage out of the cards he's already created.
Sorry. Yeah.
Here we have the updated life totals, 12 to 12. Now both players approaching the point where they really need to start worrying about the Storm Striders for lethal. If they completely go hands up, they open themselves up to Emeritus Scolding. We did see an Emeritus Scolding blue pitched earlier. I believe it was blue by Sage. So we know it's in circulation. Of course, you have to expect Emeritus Scolding red, because it sets you up so nicely for that 9 range in there.
Emeritus Scolding blue, most likely, from the Arsenal, right? And then
yes, but you can also play the Storm Striders Emeritus Scolding red if you need
Sure.
to. But yeah, for sure, you can definitely go Emeritus Scolding blue, Storm Striders in a second spell. Have Metacarpus Note available to you as well.
Absolutely.
Waning Moon plus that as well.
This is where most of the damage does lie in this final combo once the Storm Striders is here. The Coronet Peak threatening to ask Sage to, well, demanding Sage discard a card. Interestingly for Brian, has a choice to Arsenal Sink Below, or I'm assuming a blue non-attack action. The Sink Below, however, we saw Viet Fam, Worlds 2022. I believe it was Viet Fam versus Michael Hamilton. Viet Fam Arsenal to Sink Below that Hamilton had seen for some reason, revealed to some effect. And Michael Hamilton, for the rest of the game, did not use a single attack action, keeping Viet Fam's Arsenal stuck on that Sink Below. And it was those type of decisions that propelled Mr. Hamilton forward to the first World Championship title. So Sink Below here, powerful card to get that 4 value, but if Sage doesn't present attack actions, can be challenging to get the value, and I think that's why we see Brian going to keep it in the hand.
One of the most gutsy plays of perhaps all time,
so sick.
recognizing the Sink Below and just playing.
I was in line to meet James White at the time, but I heard the casters talking about it, and I was like, wait, I was telling anyone who would listen, like, this is so cool. This got a Sink Below stuck in Arsenal. Flesh and Blood is the best.
Aetherized Fane fused with the Insidious Chill trigger on the stack first. This is the last trigger on Insidious Chill. Opponent sitting at 12. Sage putting things together here. Have an E-Pot on the board. You've established 2 Frost Hexes, 1 for yourself, but Amulet of Ice over there on Brian's side.
Discard a chill.
Discard the Sink Below 2 Chill, but now this is where the problems start to lie. Sage threatening 5 points of arcane damage. Card still in hand for the Waning Moon, demanding, again, a card from hand, but threatening a number of points of damage. And if Brian just goes full hog, either takes too much damage or isn't able to present enough threats and takes the cards out of hands on Brian's turn, then Sage, depending on that arsenal, Blue Emeritus Scolding, Blue Ice Bolt, you have the 2 counters for the Waning Moon, and of course the Storm Striders, you can get 12 easily, and Brian is going to be at lower than 12 at the end of this turn regardless, because AB4 means at least 1 point of this Aether Ice Vein is coming across.
Yeah, I can't quite make out what the arsenal is for Brian. He's favoring that card, maybe considering trying to play it. Players in the hall playing this format, as well as some players are going to be gearing up for some side events as well. MinMax hosting the event, running side events alongside of both of these days. So players able to play in the Battle Hardened and just play some fun side events as well. Dropping down to 8, and there is a Blue Emeritus Scolding that he's pitching for it.
Dangerous here. Looks like it's going to be the Cold Snap. Asking if that card wants to be frozen or 1 can be paid.
You're going to think I'm paying if I'm going to freeze it. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, it's like, oh shit.
I'm just giving you up.
He said freeze it. Sage was like, well, let me think for a second.
I've blown it. 3.
It's fun to hear these players banter back and forth. It's fun to just revisit these old heroes and to see them in perhaps a new light after watching them make their run to the Living Legend leaderboard and then return with perhaps some new tools at their disposal.
Yes. Okay.
Now, once again, Brian committing the Frostbite and Sage able to break it with the Waning Moon. Let's see if Brian wants to fall to 6 here. And if he just throws that Wounded Bull at the end of the turn on 6, that could be very dangerous, given that there is a Waning Moon ready on Sage's side with that Storm Striders and whatever that final card is, looking to maybe just close this thing out. It is just going to be the Wounded Bull coming in for 8. Sage said, I'm sorry, no cards in hand. We're going to start things off. There's the Emeritus Scolding with the Metacarpus node. Can pay into it. That's going to be 5 points of arcane damage, 3 points of arcane damage. There's 8 right off the bat. Didn't even need the Storm Striders there. Nope. Sage takes the win in the mirror over Brian.
Yeah, the moment you drop into those single-digit life totals, you're just open to so many different lethal pathways, and all you have to do is draw into one of those, and especially when your hand is, face up like that, you just draw into one of those, and you just have no recourse. So you almost you look at that from the other side, and you go, oh, well, do I just not do anything? And then lethal's presented again next turn. Yep. It just puts you in that just unwinnable scenario.
Bit of a blender.
Yeah, exactly.
Bit of a blender.
We are going to jump into a new game. We're going to take a short break. Well, a little bit of a long break. A little bit of a longer break, but I mean, long is relative. Let's be honest. Compared to other events and things like that, this is going to be in no time at all. So, don't go too far. We're going to get our next game set up and ready to go. We might talk to some players as well. We'll be right back. Goodbye.